Okay, our next video in this series of videos on how to revise properly is really useful for GCSE and anything where you need to memorize a lot of facts first, and it's called the PQRST system. The principle is this: it's about self-testing, and it goes through 5 stages. So P is for preview, reading through. You're reading summaries, not the actual notes themselves. You're better off reading through the flashcards for a start, because you've already summarized the notes and hopefully a lot of the information will be there in your brain already. Q is for question, turning the sections into questions that you have to answer in your brain. R, reading your questions through and then answering from the text and seeing if you can actually answer without referring to the text. You can mark or highlight keywords and points, but you don't have to. You're testing yourself, remember. S, say your answer out loud. Explain the keywords. Talking to yourself is actually, well, in some cases it's the most intelligent conversation you'll get in the day. But at the same time, it's also a really good way of getting your brain to engage on a slightly different level from the written level. And T is for testing yourself, going over the questions and making sure that you can remember the answers to them days later. So, P for preview. Flick through your notes, whatever you've made them on, the flashcards, perhaps even the Quizlet notes that you've done online, and focus especially on the headings, okay? Let me give you some examples. From film, you might have types of audiences. From media, we might have codes and conventions. This can be done through the online Quizlets as well, so don't be afraid to use them. It's a really easy way to do it. After that, you've got Q. Q is question. So whatever your headings were and whatever your information was, try and put it into a question. For my types of audiences section, I might think about what different types of audiences watch film. For my codes and conventions section in media, I might think about what techniques come under codes and conventions, for instance in broadcast. And write down your answers. This is separate to the flashcards themselves. Write them down along with the questions. Read the questions that you've written. That's the R section. If you answer them then from your notes, from the flashcards, etc., you can see that you're now working on a much more summarized level of the information that you've got. So hopefully it should be recalling the larger amount of information that you had in your notes. You can highlight keywords, underline them, or whatever. And then S, say them. Say your answer and explain it out loud. Make sure that you can work your way around this answer lots of different ways. One of the reasons you do that is that it engages your brain differently to the way your brain is engaged while writing it. And that helps you to remember it on different levels. And finally, test yourself. Remember the idea of interleaving and this idea of the curve. We forget things much more easily if we haven't seen them for a number of days. Well, keep testing yourself every few days, and this will give you an idea of what you're remembering well, and it'll also give you an idea of which areas you've got to work harder on. If you can't remember it a few days later, then you haven't learnt it. Start revising again. As an example for you, this would be, let's say we were doing media and we were thinking about new media. The P preview section would be going through your notes, going through your revision materials, and perhaps your Quizlets, your flashcards, everything you've written about new media. The Q, question bit. We formulate a question about this new media section. So I've already done what different types of new media exist. R, read through this question and bullet point key answer ideas from your revision materials. If you can, start without looking at them and see how many you remembered. S, say your question and your answers out loud. It helps to lodge them in your brain, in a different part of the brain. T, test yourself on them. See how many you can remember correctly from the question and the cues that you wrote down. With a little bit of luck, done consistently over a number of days, this method helps you to recall facts much more easily, especially if you've been working from the flashcards that we were talking about previously.